Hi everyone, I'm Lauren and this is my channel, Miss Sunny Gamer. I'm really sorry it's been such a long time since my last video. I think it's been about 2 months. Life has just been crazy. I finished up my last project for school and we've been dealing with a lot of international paperwork shenanigans, so that's a lot of fun. No, not really. There's just been so much going on. I've still been reading, just haven't had the motivation to really put out a video, and so I'm finally doing a video, yay! I'm just gonna go over what I read in September this time. I'm not gonna go over August, just because I read a lot in August, and it's been so long, and it'll probably be just me going, well, this is good, I guess, so yeah, that won't really be too great of a video. So let's just go into what I read in September. I read 6 books in September, which isn't a whole lot for me, but you know, you have good months and bad months, and that's how it goes. Thankfully though, despite not reading that many, I did enjoy most of the books that I read. I read 1 book that I rated 3 stars, 2 books that I rated 4 stars, and the other 3 I rated 5 stars. So that's really good. Don't know what the average is. Maybe I'll have to do that. I didn't do any calculation or stats for this time, because I just wanted to get the video out. Most of the books I read were digital, so I'm gonna have to keep on looking down at my notes to remember exactly what I read, so sorry about that. The first book I read was What If? Serious Scientific Answers to Absurd Hypothetical Questions by Randall Munroe. Randall Munroe does the webcomic series XKCD, which you may or not be familiar with. It's pretty well known, but in it he does a lot of funny things and mixes it with like he does a lot of funny things with like scientific and computer science type things, so they're very nerdy kind of jokes. And in the book, he takes the really absurd reader questions that could be solved with math and science and all that, and he answers them in a very comedic way, but also with like proof and all that stuff. And it was really good, actually. I was a little bit worried I wouldn't understand it, because I am not super into that kind of science. I like computer science. That is very different than just like physics and chemistry and that kind of thing that he delves into. But I really enjoyed it. And he does a lot of little drawings to help emphasize his point and get a joke in there as well. And it was really interesting. I don't know if I exactly learned useful things. It was just kind of interesting, and I enjoyed it. So I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. Obviously I didn't do an August book read interview, but in August I finished up the Final Empire, which is the final book in the first half of the Mistborn series by Sanderson. And so kind of soon after that I read and finished The Secret History by, obviously, Sanderson. And in the Secret History, it takes the point of view of Kelsier, who's a major character in the Mistborn books or whatever. You never really know what he's gonna do kind of in the actual main books, because it follows the Vin for the most part, since she's the main character. And so this kind of gave a different perspective on what was going on with Kelsier and a lot of other spoilery stuff, which I won't get into here. But it was very interesting, and it was well worth the read to figure out all the behind stuff and kind of give a sneak peek sort of into the next part of the Mistborn series. I don't remember what it's called. Yeah, so I can't really, it's like all spoiler. The whole book is spoilers, basically, so I'm not going to talk about it that much in depth, but it was very interesting. I got to learn more about the Mistborn world a little bit, and so yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was very worth the short read that it was, and I gave it a 5-star rating. So the next book is actually the only physical book that I read in September. It's really weird for me to do that because I usually go ham on physical media, but it just didn't work out that way in September, I guess. Anyway, it's also a reread. Anyway, the book I read was Elsewhere by Gabrielle Zevin. So Elsewhere is about this teenage girl who dies in an accident, and she is sent to Elsewhere, which is kind of the afterlife in this universe. And in Elsewhere, it's kind of this nice place where you can do whatever you kind of feel like doing, and just live happily. The only thing with Elsewhere is that you age backwards. So that's really nice for people that are really old, but if you're a teenager who hadn't even gone to college, hadn't had a driver's license, hadn't lived out her life yet, it's something that she has to come to grips with throughout the story. Because she's just going to be turning back into a kid right away. That really sucks. This is actually a reread for me. I read it a really long time ago. I don't know how old this book is, but I read it in high school. So, yeah, it's copyright 2005, so I don't know when I read it. I don't know if I read it when it was new or not, but it's a pretty simple book. It doesn't really, what I explained doesn't really get too much more in depth than that. There are other characters that she talks with, and they try and convince her that it's not so bad, and there's so many things you can do here, and there are people that, and there's some little bit of romance in here. And I find it just kind of an interesting take on what happens when you die. That sounds really depressing, but it's actually a fairly light-hearted book. It's either a YA or a middle grade. I don't know which. It could be a middle grade. It's definitely written more younger audience than me. I still really enjoyed it though, and like maybe it reads a little bit too basic for some people, maybe, and it was leaning there for me, I think, as well. But I still enjoyed it, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. For the next book, I read a comic off of Hoopla, which I was kind of getting into still, and that is Dear Justice League by Michael Northrop. This comic is about these letters that various Justice League heroes get from kids, and they kind of respond to them, and there's some lessons to be learned, and there's also a small and there's also this small overarching story where they're kicking these bug guys' butts. Like, this is definitely written for kids. And normally, like, kid humor doesn't really work well for me, but I actually enjoyed this. It doesn't get too like, lame kid humor. It was actually kind of sweet funny, I guess. Kind of cute funny. I don't know. It's hard for me to describe really short comics like this, but I did enjoy it, and if you're looking for something more serious, then obviously don't read this, but it was kind of cute. I liked it enough. So overall I gave it a 4-star. The next book I read, another comic, was Alex and Ada, the Complete Collection by Jonathan Luna. This one's a little bit more complicated. It takes place in a world where everybody has these personal robot people kind of thing. They don't have free will, but they're pretty useful for doing chores and that kind of thing. Just general company. Not a very deep kind of company, but and the main character, Alex, gets one of these robots, and he's not really too happy with it because it's like, what can you do with it? This is just nothing. It's not, she's not real, and he finds out there's this underground organization type thing that will unlock Ada. That's what he named the robot, and she'll have free will, because apparently these robots have free will kind of stuff deep in their programming. It's just they need to unlock them. However, this is super illegal because the government doesn't want all these free robots doing shenanigans, I don't know. Alex gets Ada unlocked, and there's a lot of shenanigans about trying to hide her, make sure she's safe and happy, and then like questions about should they really be awakened, and I don't know. So I read all of these books really early in September, so I don't really remember too much of what happened, and I think Alex and Ada is the one that I remember the least about. I just was okay with it. I'm not really sure. I didn't super duper like it, but it was okay. The art style I didn't really like. I thought it was a little bit like it worked, but I didn't really enjoy it either. So overall I just gave it a 3 out of 5 star. The last book I read is very different from what I normally read, and that is A Dog's Way Home by Bruce W. Cameron. This is about this guy who adopts a dog that was kind of on the streets, and he doesn't really have a lot of money to take care of her, and there's a lot of drama between him and this building site that wants to take place and destroy stuff and be a nuisance and yada yada. And they kind of get into a squabble, and he's also trying to make sure he makes enough money to take care of this new dog. There's a problem in that the area that he lives in can't have pit bulls, and the bad people are like, that's totally a pit bull, when she's really not, but they say that she's a pit bull, so she's a pit bull. And he has to find a new place to live. Camera changed, my camera died. It's a pain. Anyway, A Dog's Way Home. The dog is put at a temporary shelter, but the dog escapes thinking that they'll be able to find their way home, and of course, as you might expect from the title, they have to find their way home for the most of the book. And they have to kind of survive in the wilderness, and they meet a lot of different people that help or hurt her along the way. I didn't think I'd be close to tears reading it, but I basically was. I guess animals really get to me. And it all takes place from the dog's perspective. So sometimes you know things that the dog doesn't know that are going to happen, and it's like, oh no, don't stay there, or whatever, I don't know. It gets really depressing, but it is a very interesting journey, and I really liked it. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. Anyway, sorry for this weird camera change again, and thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll make videos a bit more frequently. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll hopefully see you for another video. Bye!